I remember the exact second my life cracked open. Not when Rebecca said the words. Not even when I understood them. No, it was the moment just before. That soft click as I pressed play on the little silver voice recorder I'd picked up from the clinic last week. I'd bought it for patient notes, something lightweight, discreet. It slipped easily into coat pockets, handbags, apparently hers too. I didn't mean to find it. I didn't mean to hear it. But life rarely asks permission before it wrecks you. The house was quiet. Our daughter, Emma, had just gone to bed. Rebecca was downstairs in the kitchen, humming to herself as she prepped for tomorrow. The kind of night where everything feels normal, until it isn't. I was sorting through my work bag, looking for a referral slip, when I found the recorder. Still on. Battery nearly drained. Curious, I pressed play. I expected patient notes. But the voice that came through wasn't mine. It was hers. Rebecca. She was laughing, light, unguarded. That laugh I hadn't heard in months. The kind she used to give me, back when she'd look up from a glass of wine and say, "You're still my favorite part of the day." She was at a cafe. I could hear the clink of spoons, the low murmur of conversations. Across from her was Eliza, her closest friend, sharp-tongued and always a little too interested in other people's marriages. They were talking about me. And then I heard it. I never loved him. He was just, convenient. Safe. I knew he wouldn't cheat. I knew he'd work himself to death so I could live like a queen. Love? My real love was always. A pause. Then a whisper, so faint I had to rewind it. Again. And again. Until the name came through, like the crack of a match in a dark room. Jason. Jason. A colleague of mine. Another doctor at the clinic. Not a stranger. Not some shadow from her past. Someone I worked with. Someone who shook my hand in the break room. Who complimented me on my surgical notes. Who handed our daughter a teddy bear the day she broke her wrist and said, "She's got her dad's strength." And just like that, the ground shifted. But I didn't confront her. I didn't yell, or cry, or march downstairs to demand answers. I sat there, perfectly still, as the last bit of light slipped from the room. And something in me began to change. Not rage. Not sorrow. Something colder. Sharper. Resolve. Because now, I knew. And knowing changes everything. To most people, Rebecca was grace itself. She moved through life the way some women move through water, fluid, composed, a presence you felt even when she said nothing. At events, she'd be the one quietly laughing at someone else's story, her eyes bright but unreadable, her voice warm like the first sip of coffee in winter. Everyone liked her. Everyone trusted her. Including me. Rebecca was the kind of woman who didn't need to try. Her beauty was effortless. She didn't chase trends. She selected them, like museum pieces she might borrow for a time and return when they no longer served her. She favored soft fabrics. Silk blouses in dusty rose or cream. Linen dresses in the summer, olive, lavender, bone white. On colder days, she wore long coats cinched at the waist, boots with just enough heel to change the rhythm of her walk. She didn't wear heavy jewelry, just a single bracelet, or a pair of thin gold hoops, or that antique locket I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the one she hasn't worn in almost a year. She smelled like bergamot and fig and the faintest trace of almond lotion. I used to catch that scent in the hall hours after she'd passed through. It used to make me smile. She read literary fiction, old poetry, things that left you unsettled. She kept a garden box of herbs on the back patio, though she often forgot to water them. She loved black and white films, French music, and long walks she rarely invited me on anymore. Rebecca was private. Not secretive, at least, I never thought so. Just, self-contained. She kept parts of herself folded away, like pages she didn't think I'd understand. Maybe she was right. We'd been married 11 years. I was a doctor, internist by training, structured by nature. I charted things. Organized. Made lists. My love was steady, not loud. I brought her tea when she had cramps. I held her hair back when she got sick during Emma's pregnancy. I never forgot her birthday. I left notes in her coat pockets. I thought that mattered. And for a while, it did. But people don't starve from a lack of extravagance. They starve from a lack of feeling seen. And Jason? He saw her. Not the way I saw her, partner, mother, someone to protect. He saw the parts she'd kept hidden. The pieces I never thought to reach for. I found the first hint by accident, security footage from the clinic's back stairwell, stored automatically on a cloud server. I wasn't even looking for her. I was investigating a patient complaint. I clicked the wrong folder. The timestamp read, Tuesday, 6:17 p.m. The hallway lights were dim. She came through the stairwell door in her navy coat, windblown, cheeks flushed. Jason followed close behind. He said something, inaudible, but it made her laugh. She turned, facing him, her hand still on the railing. He stepped closer. Too close. Her laugh faded. They stood there in that silence, the kind that hums with decision. The kind that either breaks something or binds it forever. She touched his chest. Just once. Then let her hand fall. He didn't hesitate. He cupped her face with both hands and kissed her, not hungry, not rushed. It wasn't lust. It was familiar. She kissed him back. Like she'd done it before. Like she knew where his hands would land, how he'd breathe, how long he'd wait before breaking the kiss and touching his forehead to hers. I couldn't look away. There were no obscene gestures, no vulgar moans. Just 1,000 tiny betrayals, the way she smiled against his mouth, the way her fingers slipped beneath his collar, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth holding on to. When they pulled apart, she said something. Her lips moved, soft and sure. I've watched that frame more times than I care to admit. I still haven't figured out what she said. But I know what he said. I lip-read it. Over and over. 4 words, quiet and cruel in their simplicity. You shouldn't go home. And she nodded. She nodded. As if home, our home, was just a place she borrowed, not something she built. That night, she came in late. Said she'd stayed back to finish charts. She kissed Emma's forehead in the dark and climbed into bed beside me, her skin cool, her breath steady. She fell asleep within minutes. I didn't sleep at all. I lay there listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, and I knew I was lying beside someone I no longer recognized. The woman I loved was gone. And the woman who stayed? She wasn't mine. Not anymore. There's a kind of silence in betrayal that feels almost surgical. Not screaming. Not chaos. Just precision. That's where I lived, in the days that followed. Not rage. Not even heartbreak, not yet. Something colder. Cleaner. A stillness that let me breathe without shaking. The same kind of stillness I learned in med school, when a heart monitor flatlined and every eye turned to me. Don't react. Act. The first thing I did was wait. I kissed Rebecca goodbye like always, handed Emma her lunchbox, and waved from the porch as they drove off. I noted the time. 7:54 a.m. The tail light on the left side still flickered when she braked. I'd fix it eventually, I thought. Then I turned and walked back inside, not to sulk, but to begin. I opened my laptop and logged into our clinic's administrative portal. Rebecca's login credentials were still saved from the last time she'd helped with scheduling. I didn't even need to guess her password, it was still her mother's birthday. The first file I opened wasn't medical. It was financial. I started with the basics: clinic payroll, supply invoices, utility bills. Everything looked ordinary on the surface. But then I spotted the transfers: small, scattered, consistent. From our joint operating account to a personal checking account I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not hers. Not the clinic's. I traced the routing number. Chase Bank. Opened 2 years ago. Monthly transfers, always just under the $10,000 flag threshold. Classic structuring. I didn't stop there. I dug deeper, into insurance reimbursements, where our revenue really came from. She'd been overbilling. CPT codes padded just enough to be missed by casual review, but I wasn't a casual reviewer. I was a physician who understood the cost of a test before the nurse even brought the tray in. Rebecca was skimming. Not a lot. Not fast. Just steady. The way someone might steal bricks from a house one by one, until it collapsed. Next, I backed up our cloud storage to a private server in my name. Everything: patient files, billing records, meeting notes, email chains. Not because I planned to expose her. Not yet. I just needed to see it all. And I did. I saw the pattern: days Jason was on call late, she stayed behind. Days he wasn't, she came home early, giddy, tired, softer than usual. I saw clinic memos she'd forwarded only to him, documents co-signed in both their names when only one had ever been present. I saw prescription orders she backdated to match his shifts. It was all there. And that wasn't all. One afternoon, while Rebecca was showering, I borrowed her keys. The red key fob she always clipped to the inside of her purse: clinic, house, mailbox, and a locker. Clinic locker number 28. She never used it. At least, that's what she told me. Too small for anything, she'd said once with a shrug. I opened it the next morning, just before sunrise. Inside, I found a change of clothes, neatly folded, still warm from her perfume. A pair of black flats. A toothbrush. A small glass vial of perfume I hadn't seen before, citrus and vanilla, sweet but unfamiliar. And a photograph. Not printed. Hand-drawn. It was of Emma, Rebecca's sketching style, light and tentative, but there was another figure beside her. A man, half-finished. Jason. No doubt. The drawing wasn't complete. But the gesture was. It meant permanence. This wasn't infatuation. This was design. I took nothing from the locker. I closed it, relocked it, and walked out into the early morning light. Back in my office, I turned to the last piece. I scheduled a meeting with my sister, Emily. A corporate attorney. I told her, plainly, that I needed help. I want the clinic in your name, I said. She blinked. Why? Because if Rebecca burns this place down, I said, I want the fire to stop at your door, not mine. We began the paperwork that day. By the end of the week, I'd moved the majority of our liquid assets to protected accounts. Everything above board, nothing shady. I left Rebecca's name on enough to keep the illusion alive. Because that's what I needed from her, normalcy. Until I was ready. Every night, I kissed her shoulder and said, good night. Every morning, I poured her coffee and asked, sleep okay? I never flinched. Because the autopsy had already begun. She just hadn't realized the patient was our marriage, and I was the one holding the scalpel. There are moments when love and hate live in the same breath. When a face you've kissed 1,000 times becomes unfamiliar. When a memory, once tender, replays in your mind with barbed edges. That was me. Waking up beside her. Smiling. Speaking softly. Holding her waist while she stirred cream into her coffee, knowing full well she had used those same fingers to unzip Jason's shirt days earlier. But even then, I didn't hate her. That was the hardest part. Hate would have been easier. I loved Rebecca. Still. In spite of everything. Or maybe because of everything, because I had invested so much of myself into her that detaching felt like tearing my own skin off. She was not just my wife. She was the shape of my future. She was the voice I heard in my head when I made decisions, the scent on my pillow when I traveled, the image in my mind when I pictured growing old. How do you stop loving someone whose name is stitched into your life like a second heartbeat? I'd stand in the shower in the morning and let the water run cold until my skin went numb, just to feel something else. I'd stare at the steam gathering on the mirror and ask the same question over and over, was any of it ever real? Did she love me in the beginning? Did she mean it when she said yes? When she cried holding Emma for the first time, when she leaned into me at her father's funeral, when she whispered, "Don't ever leave me," did she mean it? Or was I always a placeholder? Was I just a bridge between her loneliness and her real desire? Jason. I couldn't stop seeing him. Not physically. Mentally. Emotionally. Jason was in every room. Every shadow. Every silence. I'd hear Rebecca's phone vibrate on the counter and wonder if it was him. I'd smell her shampoo and wonder if he'd buried his face in her hair the night before. I'd hold her hand during Emma's school recital and wonder if she was thinking of someone else. The worst part was, I never asked. Not once. Because I wasn't ready for the truth. Not yet. I kept playing the role, devoted husband, compassionate father, brilliant doctor. I made small talk at the clinic. I laughed at Emma's jokes. I sent Rebecca articles about parenting, like I always did. But inside, I was coming undone. There were moments I almost told her. Little cracks in the mask. Once, she walked into the bedroom wearing one of my old button-down shirts, the one she used to steal when we first moved in together. Her hair was damp, curling slightly at the edges, and for a second I saw her, not the woman she became, but the girl I fell in love with. And it broke me. I felt this surge in my chest, this unbearable ache, and I almost said it, I know. But I didn't. Because part of me wanted to believe it could still be saved. And another part of me, darker, colder, knew better. At night, when she rolled over and fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, studying her face in the blue light of the moon. I tried to memorize her again. The way her lashes rested on her cheek. The small scar near her jawline from where she fell off her bike in college. The way her fingers curled slightly inward as she slept. I told myself it was the last time. Every night, the same lie. I started writing things down. Not because I needed a record. But because I couldn't hold it all in my head anymore. Things she said that didn't match. Her changing schedule. The shift in her voice when she spoke his name, which she only did once, by mistake, when telling me about a meeting that ran long. Jason. I nodded. Said nothing. But inside, my stomach turned to lead. I had dreams where I screamed at her. Where I threw plates, punched walls, dragged Jason into a locked room and asked, why, until my throat gave out. But in reality, I said nothing. Because that wasn't who I was. I wasn't a destroyer. I was a builder. I built our home. Our life. I put down every brick. Paid every bill. Picked out Emma's crib. Cooked dinner on the nights she worked late. Read parenting books. Sent flowers on her hard days. And now I realized something terrible. You can give someone the world. And they'll still ask for more. Sometimes not because they want more, but because they don't want you. It wasn't about the physical proximity. It wasn't about passion. It was about identity. About feeling alive. And somehow, somewhere, I had become a mirror she no longer wanted to look into. That thought hurt more than anything. More than the affair. More than Jason. Because I hadn't just lost her heart. I had lost her respect. And without that? What are you? There comes a moment, quiet, unceremonious, when something inside you just locks into place. You stop questioning. Stop hoping. Stop waiting for an explanation that makes the betrayal easier to swallow. That moment came for me on a Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a grocery aisle. Rebecca had texted. Running late. Patient emergency. Don't wait up. I stared at the message while holding a box of cereal, watching the little typing dots vanish, reappear, vanish again. What she didn't know, what she hadn't known for weeks, was that I had already seen her patient roster that day. I'd seen the discharge times. I'd checked the on-call schedule. There was no emergency. Just another lie, dressed up in a white coat. That night, she came home smelling like wine and laughter. She kissed Emma on the forehead, left her shoes at the door, and gave me that tired, practiced smile. Rough day, she said. You wouldn't believe it. I believed it. Just not the version she told. Want me to warm you something up? I asked. She shook her head and walked to the bedroom. And I stood there in the kitchen, hands flat on the counter, watching the microwave's digital clock blink. 8:42 p.m. She was always home by 7:30, except for the nights she wasn't. I didn't follow her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't shout. I went back to the office and opened the envelope I'd prepared 2 days prior. Inside was everything. Every transfer, every unauthorized expense, every false billing entry with her login attached. Copies of her private account statements. Time-stamped photos from clinic security. All neatly labeled. Precise. Evidence. But evidence wasn't enough. Not yet. What I needed was confirmation. I texted Jason. Need to talk. Alone. Just us. Don't worry, it's not what you think. He responded within minutes. Sure. After hours. Conference room B, tomorrow. 6 p.m. I picked that room for a reason. No windows. Soundproof. Neutral ground. The kind of place where hard things could be said without being overheard. When he walked in the next evening, he looked relaxed, too relaxed. No hesitation. No guilt. He smiled. What's going on, Mike? Sit, I said. He did. I closed the door and placed a folder between us on the table. Unlabeled. Just thick enough to feel dangerous. He eyed it but didn't reach for it. I want you to be honest with me, I said. He shrugged. About what? You know what. Silence. Then he leaned back, arms crossed. Look, if you're referring to Rebecca, I think it's best if you talk to her. Wrong answer. You're a doctor, I said, folding my hands calmly. You know how to spot symptoms. Patterns. Do you see the one you're in? He laughed, light, dismissive. Mike, come on. This is personal stuff. Let's not bring it into work. It is work, I said, my voice cool. She's stolen from this clinic. And so have you, by omission, by manipulation. Don't pretend otherwise. His smile faltered. That's a serious accusation. I don't make accusations. I make diagnoses. I opened the folder. He stared down at the papers. One by one. Transaction logs. Screenshot stills. Emails. Her signature beside his. Her handwriting. Her lies. And then, at the very bottom, the recording. A small flash drive. He didn't move. I pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the room, grainy but clear. I never loved him. He was just, convenient. Safe. I knew he wouldn't cheat. Love? My real love was always Jason. He sat very still. I paused the audio. Met his eyes. You're not just sleeping with my wife, I said. You're conspiring with her. And that has consequences. He opened his mouth. Closed it again. I leaned in. You know what's coming. Criminal charges. Medical board review. Public disgrace. He stood suddenly, jaw clenched. You think you're going to ruin me? No, I said, calm as ice. You already did that yourself. I'm just telling you the results. He stared at the folder again. Then at me. Something passed between us, not hatred, not fear. Just recognition. He had underestimated me. They both had. He left without another word. That night, I came home late. Rebecca was in bed, pretending to sleep. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at her back. And I realized, I didn't want an apology. I didn't want the truth. I had it already. I wanted freedom. And I was ready to take it. The night after my meeting with Jason, something in the house changed. Not a noise. Not a confession. Not a fight. A shift. The kind you only notice when you've already accepted the truth, when you know a storm is coming and someone suddenly starts closing windows. Rebecca was unusually quiet at dinner. Her fork barely scraped the plate. Emma chatted about a book she was reading, and Rebecca smiled, nodded, even laughed once, but it felt off. Her eyes were elsewhere. Distant. Like she was listening for something no one else could hear. After Emma went to bed, Rebecca stood at the sink, hands trembling slightly as she washed a wine glass we hadn't used. Are you okay? I asked. She paused, water still running. I haven't felt right lately, she said. Something's off. I nodded, waiting. She didn't look at me. Just kept her eyes on the glass. Maybe it's stress, she said. Or my thyroid. Or something worse. And just like that, the card was played. She was stalling. I saw it instantly. She didn't know what Jason had told me, or maybe she did. Either way, she sensed something had shifted, that her safe little world was no longer so safe. So she did what manipulators do when cornered. She feigned fragility. It started with headaches. Fatigue. The occasional dizzy spell, always timed for when I was in the room. Her color faded. Her appetite vanished. She started going to bed in full pajamas, long sleeves, socks, even gloves some nights. She said she was cold. Always cold. By the end of the week, she asked me to check her blood pressure. I've been getting this tightness in my chest, she murmured, eyes wide, voice low. She held out her wrist like a sacrament. I took it. Cool skin. Strong pulse. Completely normal. But I played along. Because I knew what this was. This wasn't sickness. This was strategy. She was trying to remind me that she was still the woman I had sworn to protect. Still someone who needed me. Still someone I might pity, might hesitate to hurt. But I was no longer that man. Not for her. Still, I kept up appearances. When she lay on the couch under a blanket, I brought her tea. When she coughed into her elbow, I offered lozenges. When she asked if I could cover for her at the clinic, just for a day or two, I said of course. But behind every gentle nod, every soft-spoken reassurance, I was tightening the noose. I had already moved the clinic into Emily's name. Our business bank account had been drained, legally, strategically, cleanly. I'd begun preparing legal documents, affidavits, itemized reports. I knew which judge we'd draw in court. I knew which forensic accountant I'd bring. I knew what to say, what not to say, and when. Rebecca didn't suspect the full scope. She still believed, somewhere deep down, that she had time. That the illusion of illness might buy her sympathy. And when sympathy ran out, she'd use fear. That came the next week. We were in the kitchen again. Emma was at a sleepover. Rebecca leaned against the counter, arms wrapped tightly around herself like a child. "I found a lump," she said softly. She didn't look at me. "Where?" She pointed to her ribcage. "Right here. I think it's growing." "Let me see." She hesitated, then lifted her shirt slowly. There was nothing there. No swelling. No discoloration. No visible mass. I reached out, gently, my fingers pressing the space between her ribs. She flinched. "There," she said. "Did you feel it?" "No." "Well, it's there." She dropped the shirt. Her hands shook. "I'm scared, Michael." Her voice broke then. It was the first time I'd seen her cry in weeks. Not the distant, performative tears she gave Emma when she left for overnight shifts, but real ones. Or close enough. But even as her eyes welled, even as her voice trembled, I saw the calculation flicker behind them. She was gauging me. Measuring how much was left. How much belief. How much love. How much power. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not pity. Not anger. Just detachment. Like a surgeon who's done the same operation 100 times. The emotion isn't gone. It's just been filed away. Controlled. "I'll schedule an ultrasound," I said. She nodded, sniffling. "I don't want to do this alone." "You won't," I said. And I meant it. She wouldn't be alone. She'd be in a courtroom, surrounded by lawyers and paperwork and evidence. She'd be standing across from me, hearing her own voice played back to her from that cafe recording. She'd be very far from alone. But what she wouldn't be, was in control. Not anymore. She'd given up that right the moment she whispered Jason's name. And now? Now I was just making sure she got everything she wanted: stability, space, silence. Until the final moment came. And the house of cards fell. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, just in the way a place becomes hollow when no one's telling the truth anymore. Rebecca sat across from me in a slate gray suit, hair pulled back too tight, makeup carefully chosen to suggest fatigue, not failure. She looked pale. Fragile. But it was the kind of fragility that's rehearsed. Controlled. A few weeks ago, she'd still been limping through the house like an injured bird, clutching her side, sipping broth, glancing at me from beneath lowered lashes. But today? Today, she was upright. Alert. Still pretending to be the wronged wife who didn't understand why her world was unraveling. Jason wasn't beside her. He hadn't been seen since the day I handed him the folder. Word traveled fast in our professional circles. "Suspension pending review" was the official phrase. He'd vanished, like a man who knew exactly what he'd gambled and lost. Rebecca never mentioned him again. Not once. Not even when she filed for divorce. Her attorney did the talking. Said she deserved half the assets, including part of the clinic. Said she'd made sacrifices to support my career. That she'd dedicated the best years of her life to building our family. That she was entitled to financial security, after a prolonged period of marital neglect. Marital neglect. I sat there, silent, watching her lie through someone else's mouth. My lawyer passed me the recorder like it was nothing more than a pen. I held it loosely in my hand. And then I pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the chamber. "I never loved him. He was just convenient. Safe. I knew he wouldn't cheat, that he'd work himself to death so I could live like a queen. Love? My real love was always Jason." The courtroom didn't erupt. It didn't need to. Silence can cut just as deep. Her attorney reached to pause it. The judge held up a hand. Let it play. And it did. It played until there was nothing left, until every ounce of contempt, manipulation, and cold calculation had aired like smoke from a fire that could no longer be hidden. Rebecca's face never changed. Not fully. But her eyes did. They dropped. Flickered. Hardened. She wasn't shocked. She was caught. The judge reviewed the documents. The transfers. The forged invoices. The emails signed with Jason's name. The timeline. The locker photo. The web sheet spun. It took 15 minutes to undo 11 years of marriage. But in truth, it had already ended the moment I heard her voice on that recorder. Everything since then had just been closure. Rebecca left the courtroom alone. No settlement. No stake in the clinic. No share of my savings. Just her name, her silence, and the wreckage she'd mistaken for freedom. I didn't follow her. I didn't even watch her go. Instead, I walked into the sunlight outside the courthouse, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, exhaled without fear. The next week, Emma and I left for Maine. A rental house on the coast. Quiet. Clean. Just the two of us and the smell of pine and ocean salt. She asked once, quietly, while we built a sandcastle, if Mommy was okay. I looked at her small fingers shaping the wet sand, and said, she's figuring things out. That was all I could give her. The truth softened. We stayed 2 weeks. On the last night, I got a message. From someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Clara. We'd met in college. Dated briefly, then lost each other in the tide of adulthood. She'd moved to Vermont. Became a therapist. We'd spoken only once since, at a mutual friend's funeral. But the message was simple. I heard what happened. If you ever want to talk, or not talk, I'm here. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. Now, months later, we talk often. No games. No veils. Just words and pauses and real things. She asks good questions. The kind you don't know how to answer until you hear yourself try. Like. Do you think you ever really stopped loving her? And I say. I think I stopped needing her. That's the real turning point, isn't it? Not when you stop hurting. But when you stop waiting for the person who hurt you to make it better. Rebecca was never the end of me. She was a chapter. A difficult, unforgettable one. But I'm still writing. Still choosing. And this time, I'm choosing me. Because love without truth is just dependency. And I don't want to be needed anymore. I want to be known.